live stream. We've been away for a couple of weeks. Glad to be back. We've got a great topic for you and some really interesting guests. This is one that's a little bit different than some of the topics we've been covering, but one that is of national interest. And it's kind of symptomatic of the social rot that's going on in our country. We're going to be talking about Canada Post. Before we get to our guests and introduce them and talk about really a very important issue surrounding Canada Post, I want to remind everyone that the book, Lies, Laws, and Liberties, is out. It's available on Amazon, 27 bucks. Kindle, I think it's $7, if I'm not mistaken. The sales of the book have been going very well. We're grateful for that. I've had a lot of positive feedback on it. So check it out. I think we're very proud of it, and hopefully you'll support that and the work that we do. I also want to mention on our platform right now, whether you want to watch it on YouTube or X or any of the other platforms, you can listen to it on Spotify or Apple. We have an interview with John Wilson, who was part of the Varsity Blues scandal, if you remember, a few years ago. And this was the one where, rich Hollywood people and socialites were spending money, were basically buying their kids' way into top universities. And John Wilson was at the center of that controversy wrongfully, and he explains about that. But I think you'll find that interview very fascinating. And then just today, we dropped our latest commentary, Canada's Silent Tyranny. This is the second in the three-part series that we've been doing on these new laws censoring and punishing Canadians for exercising our constitutionally protected right of free speech. So check that out. I think that if I know many of you really, we had a lot of great feedback. A lot of people checked out the first in that series, The Sounds of Silence. And I think that you'll find this one sort of elaborates and expands upon some of the things that, some of the issues that we raised in Sounds of Silence. So if you enjoyed Sounds of Silence, I think you're going to appreciate this one. It's kind of the second part in that. I'm going to throw it over to our good friend and producer, Michael Clausen, and he's going to talk to you about Buy Us a Coffee and other ways that you can support us on our various platforms. Go ahead, Michael.
Yes. Well, thank you. Well, welcome everyone, and please share this out. Some of you might be watching it later as a re-air, and that's great too. But you can still share it, even if you're not watching it live. But if you're watching us live, that will really help. Also, because we are live on YouTube, I want to bring up YouTube before the Buy Me a Coffee, and the reason for that is we are like razor thin away from monetizing. So we've been working at that for a while, but we really need your help to consume some of Leighton's content on YouTube specifically to help us just get over that last little bit so we can be monetized. I do understand that YouTube is already running some ads on Gray Matter content. And the reason for that is they're trying to find out which ads are going to resonate with our viewers. And so they do a lot of testing beforehand. So that is a phenomenal way that you can help Leighton over the next, let's say, 6 weeks, 8 weeks or so, is consume a bunch of that stuff.
Yeah, you know what? It's non-fattening, and it'll muscle up your brain.
Yes.
So
yeah.
let's go, folks.
And it doesn't cost you any money. Now, what could cost you money, if you wanted, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, if you know what I mean, you could go over to buymeacoffee.com/Gray Matter Podcast, and you could buy a few virtual cups of coffee that Leighton and I will partake of as we chat and develop great and wonderful things with our cohort, Andrew Caldas. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're happy to have a great Thursday night discussion. And just a couple of those housekeeping things. The sharing is caring, the YouTube watching to help us just get over the finish line. And I'm sure there's an Aesop's fable in there somewhere. And then, of course, the buymeacoffee.com/
Anton the Grasshopper.
Yeah, that's it.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But, we're in tough competition tonight because Tamara Leach and Chris Barber have their new show out, and they've got some great guests. So hopefully some of our audience is gonna be here tonight for this very important topic. Two great guests. One I regard as a friend of mine, Ryan Ordzik. He's a safety specialist with Canada Post. We're going to talk about that. I've known him for a few years, and I'll explain about that. And the other gentleman I just met, his name is John Devine. He's also works with Canada Post on behalf of Canada Post workers, and he's been an advocate for them for some years. So, starting off with you, Ryan, you and I met a few years ago when I had the privilege of being asked to represent a whole, I would say, I forget the exact number, it was hundreds of Canada Post workers who were put out of work by the Trudeau government when they brought in the vaccine mandates. And this was a story that has been completely ignored by the mass media in our country. And we went to court. It took a few years. We finally got to court last March in Edmonton. And sadly, the court there basically did what they have done so many times, and to its great shame in our country, is essentially refused to hear our case because it regarded the issues themselves, the legal issues and the facts, to be within the exclusive jurisdiction of labor boards, labor arbitrators. So in other words, we couldn't even have any standing in court, even though we had hundreds of people out of work with their charter rights violated because they were all put out of work due to a vaccine mandate. And your role in that, Ryan, was very, very important because you had been hired as a safety inspector for Canada Post, and you essentially were very, very, very early on in the game, did a deep dive, and you did your job. And you did a safety and assessment of the risk that the COVID-19 virus posed to Canada Post workers, and you provided that to Canada Post, and they didn't listen to you. You want to tell a little bit about that story?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to thank you folks again for having us on this evening. We do have a lot to share. There's a lot of updates as to what's been going on. But to go back a little bit on the history of things, this all started back in 2021, obviously. And it all kind of ran from Justin Trudeau's original vaccine mandate, where he was introducing his mandatory policy for the core public administration at the time. And it was through that process that I started to approach the employer and started to ask a lot of questions about what they were trying to do, about the mRNA vaccine technology itself, what they were intending with it, what the plan was for protection in the workplace, and even why the workplace was open at times if there was such a concerning virus that was floating around in the atmosphere every day, potentially infecting employees to be there, kind of thing.
So, existential crisis is what they called it at the time.
Yeah, and to me, if it was such a concern, and obviously I beat this one to death, why are facilities open, right? It's just like asbestos, it's just like mold. It's just like any other, I guess you can say, unknown substance in the workplace. It could be anthrax exposure or anything like that. If there's an unknown substance or hazard that's circulating in the environment, facilities shouldn't be open to begin with. Yeah. But nonetheless, federal government felt it was okay to continue to let employees be exposed to this, which drove the production of their vaccination policy, right? And it was through that policy that I approached the employer at the time, Canada Post, with a very comprehensive look at the mRNA technology, as well as the labor code, the COSH regulations, and the Hazardous Products Act. And I was trying to explain to them that what they were doing at the time is they were replacing the doctor's informed consent or the physician's informed consent, because they were introducing a medical product as personal protective equipment in the workplace. And of course, this is something that the employer has really never done in any facet whatsoever in the federal core public administration. And it was something that, in my opinion, based on all the information I provided the employer, the 90 questions and 40 studies and everything about mRNA.
You created a really detailed research memorandum and submitted that to them, didn't you?
Yes, and unfortunately, they disregarded every single piece of evidence
as did the
that
court.
I provided them.
The court, yeah.
They basically said we're just following the guidance of the Public Health Authority of Canada, which again I had to explain.
Following the orders, yeah.
Well, it's illegal, right? You can't, like, it's all fine and dandy. You want to take some advice from the Public Health Authority. You want to look at what Theresa Tam is saying. That's great, but when it comes to occupational health and safety law, The employer's liable. They always are. It wasn't the Public Health Agency of Canada. Wasn't Big Pharma. Wasn't any of that. And this, again, this was kind of what I was trying to point out to the employers, that they were accepting the liability. And more importantly, something that a lot of people didn't understand at the time was that we had the federal employer and Justin Trudeau creating a vaccine injury compensation program, right? And they were
Right.
saying, if you guys are going to have any injuries, please reach out to the program. We'll work with you. We'll provide you a
It
case
sounds
manager.
contradictory, doesn't it, that a vaccine that's totally safe and effective uh, needs the creation of a vaccine injury and compensation program.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to work logically, does it, Ryan?
No, and I mean, not only that, it's a program they're creating that circumvents what's already there for every single employee in Canada, which is
Right.
workers' compensation, right? And this was another piece of the puzzle that not one union was talking about in Canada, not one employee was informed when it came to the mandatory vaccination policies, was that if you suffer an injury due to our new personal protective equipment that we're going to give you in the workplace, you need to report it to us. You need to let the union know. You need to let safety know so that we can help you, we can assist you, and we can process your claim. It seemed like this was dead silent across the board, right? And this was something that Justin Trudeau, in my opinion, he did intentionally. Same with Seamus O'Regan and many of the other people that were part of the Privy Council that rolled out this vaccination policy, right? So it was from that I provided the employer all this information, 90 questions, a whole bunch of information and studies. They denied it. They buried the evidence. It went to the next point in the process, which was my local joint health and safety committee was supposed to investigate this matter with me. They met with me for a whole bunch of, I think it was 30 total minutes if I was lucky. We didn't talk about any of the evidence that I provided. They were just trying to understand my complaint, basically, and then we never talked again. And
In the
the
beginning, though,
closing-
Ryan, you were not really complaining, though, were you? You were, I mean, because I read what you wrote and I talked to you about this. You were coming at this from the point of view of you wanted to help Canada Post
Oh, yeah.
create policy that was going to secure the safety and protection of its workers. You were not a recalcitrant complainer. You were doing your job. And my understanding is your frustration was you were doing the very thing that they hired you to do, and they just weren't listening to you. And that was really the frustration. You weren't at odds with Canada Post in the beginning at all, were you?
No, and it was actually, I was acting on behalf of them for the first part of 2021
Right.
because
Yeah.
it was towards the beginning of 2021 that they announced mRNA vaccines. And I could see where
Yeah.
the whole process was going. And I was talking about this with everybody at work. And for about 6 months, just verbally, I'm communicating with people. I'm like, you guys, if you go live with this, like, these are the complications. This is why it's illegal. Like, you can't ask anybody to take a medication. This is why nobody's allowed to take aspirin at work. We're not allowed to give employees any sort of epinephrine shots. We have to assist them with their own medication. Like,
Right.
we can't do any of this stuff. And I don't want anybody to get in trouble legally with this because it's literally a poison. And here's all the proof.
Yeah.
Right? So, like you said, everybody buried it. The LJOS didn't want to touch it. They buried it at the same time. And then, of course, it went to the labor board. They tried to deny the work refusal originally and the entire investigation. I put them on notice. They were forced to investigate. But then at the closure of that investigation, of course, and I have this all documented and recorded in many different files, they buried everything and then they lied on the report about every single thing that I presented to them and had shared with them. So very frustrating for me. At that point, Canada Post invoked their vaccination policy. I went on suspension and eventually left the company because there's no way I could work for
Yeah.
what I considered.
But you were
criminal
not gonna
activity at that
you were
point.
not gonna be denied, though, were you? You didn't stop there.
No,
You kept going.
no.
Yeah.
And from there,
Like
I
the
mean,
Energizer Bunny.
well, because what we're bringing forward, and again, what I was saying, it's all very true. It's all completely correct. And I know the Labor Board understands this. I know ESDC understands this. I know Seamus O'Regan understands this because he quickly had panicked and
TV
then put
host
out a press
Seamus
release
O'Regan.
on December 7th to try and counteract my work refusal. And that's 100% the case. He wanted to change the regulations after it was pointed out to him that they had screwed up and they had nowhere to go with this. So, yeah, no, it's a, from all of it, it's been a very frustrating situation. And then, of course, we met with you afterwards. We tried to bring this to the court and all the same evidence. And we even piled more on. Like, I don't know
Oh, yeah.
how much we
It was
had
a
discovered
mountain.
about it.
It
Go
was a
ahead.
mountain. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was, and I mean, it all pointed again to Justin Trudeau and their liability in this and how they were
Yeah.
in charge of it. We had found out that the Treasury Board was enforcing the Crown corporations and their mandates, and this all plays again to occupational health and safety law. And these same laws that apply to Canada Post, the supervisors there, the managers there, the directors, everybody, it all applies to Justin Trudeau. Because when he was rolling this out, he was the boss of the core public administration. So all these health and safety laws, he has to follow them the same way like any other manager, any other director. He isn't special because he's the prime minister. And they talk about
he
this
wouldn't
very
agree with that.
no, but it's the truth. Like in Section 123, they make this very clear in the Canada Labor Code. Like it applies to the core public administration, and he's the boss of it. He was the one that invoked it as a workplace policy, which means he needs to provide the informed consent and make sure that the employees are made aware of all hazards. And then we kind of branch that off now into
It's really
the
a
actual,
practical application of the rule of law, isn't it?
it's to the letter of the law.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
it's one thing I can say that I'll take with me to my grave is I understand occupational health and safety law to a T.
You sure do.
I understand what the
Better than
employer
I
is
do.
required to do. I understand what the labor board is required to do. There's no pulling the wool over this guy's eyes, and I know Canada Post is very frustrated with that. And why again?
God bless them.
There's a lot there's a lot of folks in that group, Posties for Freedom, that you know
Yep.
over the years
Great
they've learned a
people.
lot, they've absorbed a lot, and they wanted to take this matter back to the employer after the judge ruled that this was meant to be
Yeah.
dealt with in the workplace and under the grounds of the collective agreement or the labor code.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what we did. Is we
And
took
is that
the
where
advice.
John? Is that where John comes in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So John and a few other folks wanted a document put together that would, I guess you can say, highlight all of the concerns that I had brought to the employer for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And they wanted to take that to their supervisors, the committee, and approach the employer again with the truth and the registered poisons on record. So
Yeah,
that's kind of
yeah.
where we're at in the process. And
Yeah.
the beginning of this investigation, the labor board is siding with us now. They're saying Canada
Incredible.
Post must investigate these concerns on the record.
Wow.
And now they basically have started the process. So John can kind of take
Yeah.
off from there. His process started
Wow.
today at a first level, and he can kind of explain what he understands and knows
Yeah.
about it, but because he's
Yeah.
going through it.
So let's turn to John, and but I want to say this: people don't need to understand how demoralizing this was for the postal workers to be treated this way. It was a totally dehumanizing experience to be basically discarded just because they didn't want to inject this substance into their bodies, and so there was a really really deep wound to Canada Post workers. It was caused by this corporation, as Ryan says, at the behest of government. But wow, what an incredible story of resolve, of just vigilance, that people like Ryan would just stay with it no matter what, would not take no for an answer. And then along comes Mr. Devine, the divine
indeed.
John Devine, and he steps in, and he's now, as I understand it, John, you're basically the advocate for these workers now on this issue. Is that right?
As far as the postal workers go, I'm the only one, and a member of CUP W. I'm the only one now that really has the complaint in there.
Right.
And at this point now, as we've been saying, the labor board has agreed with us.
Yeah.
And back to your point of the demoralization, I got the boot as a result of I didn't want to give my medical information to the corporation. So I didn't even go to the point of answering the phone calls.
You mean you wanted to preserve your own medical privacy?
right.
How dare you, John?
I'm-
Don't you know this is Canada?
Exactly. I take my sovereignty very seriously. So I got walked out of there and ended up joining the lawsuit. And during a fundraising effort in Edmonton, I got a U-Haul and I threw a bunch of my family's furniture and whatever else I could grab, and I ran up to Edmonton to do a garage sale. And that's where I came across Ryan. And the first time I heard I knew about the argument that he was presenting, and I was quite excited about it. My background is in logistics management. I had been trained in the labor code, health and safety, as a first aid attendant. And so I was very well aware of the value, the strength of this argument, that there was
Yeah.
going to be nowhere that they could go once
Yeah.
we presented the fact that these poisons, these toxins were in this vaccine. And
How
they're
did you get
listed
them
in
to
Health
listen though,
Canada.
John? It seemed
What's that?
like these guys had their thumbs in their ears for so long. How did you get them to listen and to
Well, it
change
was a bit of a
their
process.
approach?
A very probably, I think, on January 6th of this year, I put in my initial complaint.
Okay.
With presenting again all the information that I've been working with Ryan on to them again, essentially. And the same thing happened. The first complaint, I gave it to my supervisor. He was enthusiastic, honestly, at first when he first got it. He was telling me he was on my side, but a couple weeks go by, I'm not hearing anything. I'm not being involved in any conversations. So I go back, what's going on? Why am I not being involved in any conversations? Why is there not an investigation taking place? The supervisor told me, quote, nobody here cares about your health and safety concerns.
That was typical of what I was hearing from the posties when I met them. And in fact, that's why they came to me. Is that, they knew the processes that they needed to go through, and they were checking all the right boxes. They were filing the right complaints, their grievances and whatever. But it seemed like the union, at least in the early stage of this, was complicit with management and basically telling them, look, just shut up and get the jab. Was that kind of what you were hearing around that time?
That was what I mean. At the beginning when I first started this process again, what the key thing that the union and the corporation kept telling me is that this is a national issue. This is not something that we can handle.
Right.
So they wanted to basically wash their
Nice
hands
way to
and
pass
throw-
the buck.
throw it up to national.
Yeah.
And I countered that very well. Well, National created this mandate.
Yeah.
So what is having them investigate themselves going to resolve?
Yeah.
Obviously nothing, right?
Yeah.
And so I did escalate the complaint. I formalized it with a hazard report using their own system, Canada Post's own hazard reporting system.
Yeah.
Gave them the document. That document disappeared. They just
Really?
trashed it. And so I asked about it, what happened to this document? Nobody's talking to me again. And so, at this point, this is like 5-6 months into it, right? We've
Yeah.
gotten nowhere. Nobody's listening. Nobody's talking to me. And so at that, and so the next thing we did, labor board complaint. And finally, with this labor board complaint, and that itself also took 2 months of kind of prodding, we got a positive result. They said the Canada Post and CUPW have to follow the labor code. They have to use the internal complaints resolution process, which is where we are going to get this evidence on the record.
What do you think changed it though? Because they weren't saying that a few years ago. What is what shifted it? Because I can remember, and this is appalling. I remember
think
seeing letters from lawyers for the union, telling them to tell their members, look, shut up. Yes, this violates your charter rights. It doesn't matter. This is an unprecedented pandemic, and you're never going to succeed with your grievance. So don't even file a grievance. So how did you get this to shift? That seems incredible that you were able to do that.
We had a very concise and systematic approach with this. We followed every
Right.
step. We got emails were all kept, all the information, all the conversations. I had that all on the record. We did we did the initial report. I kept reminding them about the ICRP, just the internal complaints resolution process. Kept pointing them back to that. That you guys have to follow this. This is a labor code.
Yeah.
And basically putting them in a position where there was no way for them to get out. Right? When we brought this to the labor board, our argument was basically bulletproof. There was nowhere for them to go.
Yeah. Wow. So where is it at now, strictly speaking?
Just yesterday, we did step one with my supervisor. Right. The first step is you present the complaint to your supervisor and you have a sit-down conversation with it. And the supervisor can agree or disagree with what you're saying.
Right.
Either way, I mean, if he disagrees, I escalate to L. Josh. If he agrees, it gets escalated to L. Josh.
Okay.
The supervisor himself, I got to telling you, was terrified. I sat down with him, and Yeah, and he
Nobody
he
wants
didn't want to answer any
nobody wants the
questions.
buck to stop with them, right?
That's
Yeah.
exactly it. Yeah, he didn't want to even look at the information. I was, I don't want to look. I don't want to say anything. I'm going to take this to my supervisor. So it's a similar thing, but this time around, we have the weight of the labor board
Yeah.
behind us, right? So
Yeah.
much different and very exciting. I'm, really looking forward to.
So
pushing
you're
forward.
awaiting a decision.
Well, yeah, the next thing is to hear what the supervisor's got to say. One way or the
Okay.
other, it gets escalated to the local joint health and safety committee.
Okay.
Where I again will be involved and we will present the evidence. Only this time, as opposed to the evidence being buried,
Yeah.
it will be on the record.
Wow. And are you going to be able to present Ryan's research there at that time, or is that already been done?
It's already been presented. It's already
Okay.
it's already there. The labor board has it. Everybody at the facility has it. In fact, there's people within the group that I'm working with that are on site as well.
Yeah.
Which is also very exciting. Not everybody is shutting their ears to this
Yeah.
problem this time. We have
So-
people cooperating. So.
What are the key matters in dispute that are going to be decided?
Well, first of all, it's about the fact that the mandate itself was illegal because
Oh, yeah.
these toxins were in the shop.
That should be an easy one to
It,
decide.
it was in Canada
Yeah.
Post's own chemical database.
Yeah.
We've proven that.
Really?
Health
Wow.
Canada had those things listed as unfit for use in humans or veterinary use. So
Wow.
these are undeniable facts. This is all, there's no way of saying, no, that's not the case.
That is horrifying.
It is absolutely horrifying. And the fact that, this has been presented to them and, almost a year later, they're still not, they're not doing anything about it.
Yeah.
People that are injured,
Yeah.
walking around that have no idea that, that they have this injury as a result of the shot. And they could be doing something
Yeah.
about it to bring
Yeah.
themselves back to a state of health. But instead, Canada Post is, absolute silence,
Yeah.
which is terrible.
So are you still working at Canada Post now? Did you return?
I am indeed. Yeah,
Okay.
I am still a letter carrier
Okay.
at Canada Post. I came back after the 7.5 months or whatever it was, being leave without pay, as they call
Yeah.
it.
And did you ever get your pay?
Oh no, didn't get anything. In fact, I had to pay down when I came back.
That is
I had
just
to pay benefits.
that is so
I had to
unjust,
pay
isn't
tax
it?
dues, all back. It was
Oh.
unbelievable. but
That's
they
so
didn't even pay
unjust,
back,
isn't
right?
it?
I was
Oh.
shocked. Yeah, but
Oh.
well, I don't know if shocked is the right word anymore, but it was bad.
Yeah. And what about you, Ryan? Are you working for Canada Post again? Are you on the inside, or are you an outsider kind of whistleblower guy at this point?
No, I'm not with the company anymore. Obviously,
Okay.
I'm just trying to help out a few folks that are still trying to bring the safety matter to light. I know my experience, my education around this is help them out to understand what their rights are, and more
Yeah.
importantly, all the rights of all the employees in that facility and all federal employees for that matter too. And a couple of things that I did want to touch on this time around, that because you had mentioned, Leighton, what are some of the things that has maybe made the labor board change their tune this time around?
Yeah.
When it comes to the focus of what we're presenting this time around, it's very cut and dry, and it's honed specifically on the registered poisons and the safety data sheets and the Hazardous Products Act specifically.
So that's the weak underbelly of Canada Post on this issue, basically.
Oh yeah, and
You-
it's
you gotta
and
laser
like John
focus
had
this
mentioned,
time.
and like John had mentioned, and this is kind of the shocking thing, is that there's video evidence that we have now that they knew about these chemicals a long time ago.
You're kidding.
And it's in their system.
Wow.
And that means that somebody in the safety department down east went through the chemical approval process, read the safety data sheets, and still said that the company had to roll out this mandatory vaccination policy. So I think when the labor board maybe saw that video of their own chemical database, that maybe it put a little pressure on that ESDC officer to respond. And it's actually, ironically, it's one of the officers that investigated my complaint from 2021. So maybe now this time she is looking at things a little bit differently. I don't know. Maybe there's a change of
Yeah.
heart.
Well, they're probably not under the same degree of pressure that they were back then, and perhaps who knows, more willing to look at things, with some degree of objectivity. I think that was really what was lacking back then. You came at them with basically pure hard science. You approach this on a very rational, very objective, scientific basis. And it seems like what you were up against was just a wall of emotion and subjectivity. They just didn't want to hear it. Everything that they were told, but the ideology that they were getting, somebody who is, ideological is immune from reason, aren't they? They're just not going to. They just weren't listening last time. So, giving them the benefit of the doubt, maybe this time, some of the some of the science and reason and truth is kind of seeped through. Is that your impression, or is that giving them too much credit?
No, I honestly think that there are a lot of people that have had a change of heart. I mean, I know there's a lot of folks that I've spoken to personally in the last 4 years that 2 years ago and these are close friends of mine and stuff like that. That 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they were calling me insane. They were literally
Yeah.
like, "Ordzuk, what's wrong with you? Like you're gonna lose everything you have," and they were right about that. But nonetheless, I was correct about my approach with everything in safety. And now they're the ones that, recently, a lot of them, wow, we had no idea how much you knew about this, how much you were correct about it. And I mean, they're looking at stuff now from confirmed cases, like, and I mean, one person that's really fighting this fight on the doctor side of it and the medical side of this is Peter McCullough, right? Dr. McCullough.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I was giving Canada Post stuff back in 2021 that showed that these vaccines were going to alter employees' DNA and mutate it and change it and through reverse transcriptase. And now Dr. McCullough and his team and all these people around the world are
Yeah.
coming out and confirming that fact, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, these are all things I think that are adding to the pressure of many folks. Not only that, but I mean, I imagine all their colleagues and peers coming up ill or dropping dead around them or having turbo cancer is also another shocking eye opener that I think is waking
Yeah.
them up to what's really going on about this. So that's
Yeah.
my opinion on it a little bit, I think.
Yeah, and it reminds me of something that C.S. Lewis wrote. It's usually a safe bet to quote C.S. Lewis. So he wrote that one of the most cowardly things that people can do is to shut their eyes to the facts, and that's a good way of describing what you know employers like Canada Post, government, and judges did during COVID-19. They just didn't want to hear the facts, and but it's a blessing to hear that some of this is kind of seeping through. But I want to maybe shift the conversation now to talk about Canada Post in a broader context, because let's face it, guys, Canada Post is not just a company. It's not just an employer. It's a Canadian institution. It's a pillar of Canadian life. It's like our government structures. It's like our churches. It's like our universities and our schools, and it's something that is really at the core of Canadian life. And of course, we're seeing now recently, we had a lengthy postal strike that I don't think is quite fully resolved. But um, when you see a company or any institution that treats human beings like they're not human beings, that basically commoditizes them and dehumanizes them, it says a lot about some deeper issues, a deeper institutional rot that's in Canada Post. And so when we see the strike and disruptions in service and financial problems, it's all sort of revealing that it's all manifestations. It's all symptoms of the same disease, isn't it? What do you think about that? Maybe I'll go to you first, John. What do you think about that? Is what you're seeing right now, what you've seen in Canada Post, still working there now as a letter carrier, just right there on the front lines? Um, with this, the whole vaccine issue, it sort of fits into a broader context of things really going wrong at Canada Post. What do you think about that?
Well, going back to what you were initially saying there about it being an institution, that argument, the union's been making that argument, and that argument is failing, and that is one of the big problems
Really?
that we have right now. Yeah, well, Minister Lightbound has stepped in recently
Hmm.
and basically put the union in a position where both the government of Canada and the corporation have essentially sided against the union, saying that you're not profitable. We can't have this anymore. So I mean, if profit is what we're all about, and that's, it's a corporate environment.
Has Canada
And-
Post ever been profitable? Listen, I've noticed that the rest of our government isn't very profitable either.
Well, yeah, so exactly. So that's not a great argument. I mean, we're a
No,
public
it's
service,
terrible.
right?
Yeah.
We're there for, the rural communities more than anything else. I think
Yeah.
is the key.
Yeah.
But I mean, the culture itself, there's all kinds of problems. Say going to the issue where we have the supervisor that I'm talking about. When I first approached this issue too, and he said he referred himself as a little person. He's not going to matter.
Yeah.
And this is really the big problem is that
Yeah.
people.
That's
I
how they
mean,
make people feel there, don't they?
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
it. And so what
It
are
should
they
be
gonna do?
the other
What am
way
I gonna do?
around, right? It should be the other way
Exactly.
around. Yeah.
And so it is like a sickness, and if people were stepped into their power, realized that they aren't little, we could institute change, and we could make a
Absolutely.
successful business out of this.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great point. Ryan, I know you and I have talked about this at length about kind of how what has happened at Canada Post is symptomatic of, deeper problems, not only at Canada Post, but in the country. Um, do you see this as maybe being a sign that things are things are starting to change at Canada Post? Or is
I
that being
don't,
too
I,
optimistic?
I don't know. I wanted to be optimistic about Canada Post several years ago, and that we hadn't lost our way, or I guess they hadn't lost their way. But and to touch on your point, I think the last time they were profitable was around 2016, when was the last time they were actually pulled a profit. But it was around that time, because I think the Liberal government had taken over in 2015, that we did start to
Wait,
see
you're
a lot
saying
of.
there's a connection?
Oh, it was an obvious, it was an
Doesn't the
immediate
budget
connection.
balance itself, Ryan?
It was an immediate connection. It was shocking how every internal policy in HR changed
Yeah.
basically on a dime, right?
Yeah.
We had DEI introduced, which, and again, I'll say this outright. I'm all for people. If there are disadvantages, you can try and help them out. You can try and help them succeed. But ultimately, DEI, when you look at it from an HR perspective, it's a discriminatory hiring practice on its face. So
Oh,
again,
absolutely.
it's another one of those things
And
that Canada
expensive.
Post.
Hugely
Yeah, yeah.
expensive. Yeah.
And not only that, you're seeing it across all federal sectors, right? And it is contaminating, and all of this it's kind of contaminating society, because Canada Post in itself, it's 65,000 employees. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of mouths. It's a lot of, I guess you can say, billboards that they can drive around and they can
Yeah.
promote their causes on. And we saw all of these changes in the way that they approached regulations, the way that they measured competence. There was no meritocracy anymore at the company.
Yeah.
It was all based on feelings and how you felt you did at the end of the year, right? It was all
Yeah.
this kind of, like, I guess you could say, what's the postmodern way of interpreting your own work ethic and abilities, right? So
Yeah.
everything was really kind of disturbing. I've started to bring this stuff up politely to HR again. People didn't care. Well, we have to do what the government tells us. We're just kind of peons that do this. It's like John said, everybody feels like they don't have a voice. I think I've made it very clear. I'm one guy. I've got a lot of voice here, right? And John's now got a lot of voice, and
Yeah.
a couple other folks that have brought this matter have got a lot of voice, and
Yeah.
to the supervisor that's investigating this, and other people that might be involved, you all have a voice, and not only that, you have a legal obligation. So to me, this is another thing that I think folks are starting to come around to, is the fact that they are legally obligated to take care of the matters that are brought to their attention, and they can't sweep it under the table.
Yeah.
And I do think that if people like John continue to go into the workplace and educate supervisors and everybody else as to their rights, and everybody else at Posties for Freedom continues to do that, we're going to have success like we are right now, where the labor board kind of sits there and goes, they got a point. It's time for you guys to do what you're legally responsible for doing, and maybe let's change this culture and let's start to do what's right and fix the mistakes that we made over the last few years.
Yeah. Michael, I was quoting I was quoting C.S. Lewis earlier, and I've got another quotation from his good friend J.R.R. Tolkien, who kind of fits here. He wrote, even the smallest person can change the course of the future. That one seems to really stick here. Michael, don't you think this is a great example of what we talk about all the time on Gray Matter about citizen led advocacy? That we're all made in the image of God. We're all special. We all have something incredible to offer the world if we just have the courage to express it. What do you do you agree with me that this is a great example of that kind of being walked out?
I appreciate that question because we do talk a lot about that and that idea that we need the resistance training, but we have to be counted faithful because we don't know when opportunity is going to walk through the door to shake hands with our preparation, so to speak. And we have to keep at it. It's like that water that keeps dropping on the stone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if the water knows it, but that stone's not moving. And so what does the water do? Just keeps doing its thing, keeps dropping, keeps dropping. It knows that eventually there's going to be a transformation in the stone. That's why we like movies, because of the transformation.
Yeah.
And so as we keep persisting and not giving up, we know that the seeds that we plant and we water are going to grow and they are going to give fruit. And it has been said that a man does not plant a tree for himself. He plants it for the next 4 generations.
Yeah, yeah. And, this is kind of what we talked about during the time when I was involved representing the Posties. I wouldn't say that we were optimistic, but we always had this idea that we were going to lose until we win.
Yeah.
And so it's wonderful to hear that, people like our guests just wouldn't, they were like those drops of water you were
Yes.
talking about, Michael,
Yep.
just would not be denied. And, this is a great example of showing what can happen when we just will not take no for an answer, when we just keep coming back, when we keep knocking on doors, we keep showing up and, going into people's offices and knocking on the door. The enemy wants us to believe that, their walls are impregnable, that
Yes.
that they're so mighty and they're so big that they can never be defeated. But oftentimes, as Tolkien says, and really he's really quoting, what's in the Bible, the story of David and Goliath, for example.
Yes.
When people are really committed to something and they believe in it and it's right and it's good and the Lord blesses it, there's no mountain that can't be overcome, is there?
That's right. And this is how people will say, oh, I'm chasing money, or I'm chasing this woman or this man, or I'm chasing this job. Well, you know what? If you're chasing something, it's running away from you. It's repelled. This is why we hunt, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're a hunter, maybe your hunger drives you. And when you're chasing, you have no goal and no objective and no destination. But when you hunt and you bait the trap and you sit and you wait and you study your opponent, and you know that one of you is going to lose, and we all have that choice to say, am I going to be the one who loses, or will I be the victor? And what
Right.
do I have to do to win? And so great accounts from these two gentlemen today of showing that persistence pays off.
And also, thinking about, we talk about Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning. He talks about something called the ultimate freedom, which is we get to decide how we respond to the things that happen to us. There's that space in between stimulus and response.
Yeah.
And what's beautiful here is the way that people like Ryan and John have handled that. Coming back to you, John, I want to ask you, I'm curious to know, with all that's going on at Canada Post, you're still sort of inside the belly of the beast.
Yes.
The whale hasn't spit you out yet. What's the morale like of letter carriers and other people who are working day to day at Canada Post?
Not good. In my perspective of things, is that the government of Canada and the corporation have effectively been breaking the union. We have a situation now where the union, the membership is losing faith. All the different approaches that the union has taken this time have bear no fruit. And so there's a loss of confidence And my Minister Lightbound came out and just said, we're going to get rid of door-to-door delivery. That's, means massive layoffs. So yeah, the morale is very low.
Yeah.
And people are wondering about their futures, about their finances. I mean, that strike earlier this year was a long one that hurt people big time. And then another strike, 2 weeks. I mean, the corporation knows that the membership can't afford a long, an extended strike anymore, right? They have all the leverage right now.
Yeah.
And it's that's clear, right? And business, we just continue to kill the business through all this fight as well, right? So it's bleak at this point in time.
In the early part of COVID, I should say, I guess, especially when the vaccine mandates came in, the union seemed oblivious to what you just said. They really didn't seem to see that the government and management were planning to break the union. But that it seems pretty clear with hindsight now that was the plan all along, and that the COVID restrictions were part of that. Let's say the first wave, the first strike in that. When do you think the union started to realize that the tables had turned on them?
I'm not entirely convinced that they have. I think they have underestimated the situation. Perhaps now. I mean, what they're doing now with this rotating strike, this is something they have tried in the past, and they weren't successful with. And so
it's kind of a desperation move, isn't it?
That is my perspective of it.
Yeah.
I think the last strike action we took was a bit hastily. That action was hasty. The government came out, made that statement, and it seemed like a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
And it was everybody was in disarray. We didn't see it coming. We weren't organized.
Yeah.
And now we've got this rotating strike situation. So it does seem to me that the union has been underprepared pretty much this entire time.
Ryan, are you still providing advice on a freelance basis to companies like Canada Post about the dangers of products like the COVID-19 vaccine? Is that part of what you're doing, or is this really just a personal quest that you're on right now?
It's a bit of both. Obviously, I do have a lot of a personal stake in this whole thing, but at the same time, I'm trying to get this to apply to everybody. This has been something I've treated as an educational experience for everybody else in Canada, that anybody that watches it, right?
Yeah.
And every time I get feedback, and people take the time to listen and they go through the details and they kind of maybe even read some of the documents and look things up, they start to understand it, and they understand that the argument is completely sound and 100% legitimate. So for me, it's a bit of personal for sure. Because I do think that the corporation owes the employees a little bit of transparency and informed consent, and then they failed in that regard. Same with the union. But at the same time, I want this process that we're employing here, because I've been saying it forever to everybody I can. I want people to use this everywhere in the federal sector.
Right.
It's not just Canada Post that we can use this at. This is the internal complaint resolution process that any federal employee can use right now and get answers regarding the poisons in the vaccines, right? So you can take this to your workplace committees tomorrow. You can take this to your supervisor. The same complaint, follow the same process, because every federal agency is bound by this process, right? So they have to investigate the poisons. They have to check it on record. They have to provide you documentation. So for me, it's all about trying to educate the masses as to what their rights were. And not only that, the fact that a lot of them were duped out of workers' compensation claims that should have taken care of them and their families for a long time, based on a phony vaccination injury compensation program. So that was another thing that really pissed me off, was the fact that nobody was allowed to contact WCB or informed to report vaccine injuries. So that's another big part of this too.
Yeah. Now both
To
of
answer
you.
that, if I might,
Sorry,
actually.
go ahead, John.
One thing I discovered through this process as well is that the local joint health and safety committees haven't been operating independently. The West Tray law, it was the whole reason LJOSH was created. It's there to protect the employees from the employer.
Right.
But now we have a situation where LJOSH is taking direction from the employer. They're no longer working independently, right? I mean, I've
Yeah.
seen situations where LJOS members come to me and they say, well, we're not being given the time to investigate this. We're not going
Right.
to get paid to investigate this. And
Yeah.
it makes no sense. This is working backwards.
Yeah.
You guys are supposed to be standing up against the corporation here. The corporation's not supposed to be directing you or manipulating the situation with finances.
Yeah. This is the legal definition of a conspiracy, actually. So, but looking just a little bit deeper, I kind of want to finish off on this point because we're getting close to the end of the hour. As I met with and I talked with the many workers, not just Canada Post, but many others, they all sort of shared the same feeling that there's this sense of trust that they had extended to their employer. And and listen, people like Ryan and yourself, you gave years of your lives to this corporation, and they made you believe that you were valuable to them, and you put your heart and soul into working for them. And oftentimes, I'm sure you worked long hours and you made sacrifices with your family and your personal life, or whatever, to make that Canada Post be the institution that it was. And then there's this betrayal, and the betrayal is so deep. It's not just loss of a job. If it were just that would be bad, but the betrayal is so deep that it's to the point where they actually went out to deliberately harm their own workers, because you use the word poison. These drugs are toxic. They do kill. They do harm people. They do maim people. And this is something that across so many different companies, but all the people that I've been blessed to represent who have been through this, what you guys have, they all have the same feeling. And I don't want to over sentimentalize it, but it's like a broken heart. These people, you guys had your hearts broken by this company because they totally betrayed everything that you thought the company was. You want to talk about that a little bit? Because I think there's a human story here. We're talking about all, sort of safety stuff and legal stuff, but there's a human story at the core of this that I think people really need to hear. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Ryan?
Yeah, for me, it was one of the most eye-opening experiences into the human condition that I've ever seen in my life. Up until COVID and the employer's decision to create a vaccine mandate and to follow some of these policies, I did have a general good faith approach to everything. I gave everybody the benefit of the doubt in situations. I always kind of looked at things from a positive light, and the workplace always made sense in what we were doing and the way we were approaching situations and investigating. But honestly, with this process, and again, I can only maybe, I guess you can say, compare it to something along the lines of Stranger Things and the Upside Down.
Right.
Honestly, I have never seen anything flipped on its head in terms of legality, process, policy, anything. Even the way that people were speaking to one another, I've never seen anything like it in my life. People's personalities changed. Obviously, everybody was on edge. I get it. But they weren't changing in the sense that they were on edge. They were changing towards corruption just so they could win an argument, or to be correct, or to ensure their process went through and they didn't look like a fool with egg on their face.
Yeah.
And it came down to a lot of people that I spoke to, pride, and they didn't want to admit that they were wrong. They were other safety officers that had just as much as education experience, and they thought maybe they were right. But in the end, a couple of years later now, I mean, here we are. We're standing here with all the correct information still. And it's time for these folks to kind of flip things back over again and to join the good side of things again and to realize that they made a mistake. It's okay to admit that you made a mistake. We can fix this and we can help people if you just do what you're supposed to do and you stop acting in a corrupt fashion. So again, for me, eye-opening. I've never seen anything so bastardized in my life after that in terms of safety. Nothing made sense. Everything, as far as I'm concerned, was criminal. But here we are, and hopefully some people will maybe flip things around and they'll change their approach this time around because
Yeah.
it's all going to be coming out into the light.
It's almost like when you talk about turning it on its head, it's like love your neighbor going to every man for himself. John, what about you? How has this all of this affected you personally, and the way that you see Canada Post and your fellow workers?
I remember saying several times that, I wasn't angry, but I felt a profound sense of disappointment,
Yeah,
that, that this could happen. I mean, that I could be discarded, that I could be completely isolated,
yeah,
and that people would call me, just horrible things.
yeah,
Like, you're a murderer, for example. You're going to be killing,
yeah.
grandma and stuff. All this sort of thing, and I was brought to tears, honestly. At times by the entire thing, because it was unbelievable to me that this could
Yeah.
happen, and we've seen it before. This is not the first time something like this has happened in human history.
Yeah,
And we always talk about learning from history, and never again, but here we
yeah,
were again, and so
yeah.
definitely a profound sense of disappointment.
And sort of a sense of naivete. Speaking personally, I didn't think that this could happen in my country. I
Exactly.
thought my country was too good for this.
That's
I'd
right.
learned, and I was a student of history. I could tell you all about, the Bolshevik Revolution. I could tell you all about the French Revolution. I could talk to you all about Nazi Germany, and I could also talk about all the differences that I thought existed between those societies in Canada. But what this has all brought home to me is that don't ever think that we're not too good. We can descend into tyranny. We are as corrupted by sin as every other human beings who have ever lived, with the exception of one, and they hung him on a cross. But Michael, I want to turn to you maybe to finish this off. Now, have we received any questions or comments from viewers and listeners that we maybe want to put to our guests?
Can't hear you.
Oh, Michael, you might be muted.
There we go.
There you
Sorry
are.
about that. So we did have one from Wes, just saying, interesting guest has me thinking that Canada Post, much like teachers, need a conservative union to
Yeah.
give the members a choice as to
That's
what sort
Wes.
of union
Wes always
to
has a
belong to.
constructive solution.
Yes, he
is
sure
a-
does.
He
But
is a builder, that guy.
he sure is. So no other questions, but I have a question that I asked earlier in the show. Maybe it's a little on the nose now that you guys were have been talking, but it almost sounds like this is like a death nail to Canada, like an intentional death nail to Canada Post.
Yeah, what
But
do you
who
guys think about
benefits
that?
from that?
Yeah, what's the end game? That's a really good question, Michael. What do you think, Ryan?
Are you talking about the end game with the process
Yeah,
we're
with
doing, or?
with Canada Post, like
Well,
big picture. What do you think?
Canada Post in general, and I've been saying it to the group, that they should prepare for the worst. I do think Canada Post is obviously being phased out, and that's the most obvious reasons is the digital age that's coming here, and what folks in the WEF are planning with the Internet of Bodies,
Yeah.
and things like that. That, I mean, it's very much right in our faces now. The intention is to destroy letter mail. They don't want paper copies of things. They want everybody on a digital system so that they can track every interaction you make, every letter you send, every communication you make, everything like that. So I don't think Canada Post has too much more time left. 2030 is the agenda date, as they say, and I don't think Canada Post is going to last before that date. I don't know if they'll last another year. If they're lucky. My
As
opinion,
you were
no.
as you were talking there, Ryan, I was thinking of a song by the Police called "Every Breath You Take." Every move you make, every breath you take, I'll be watching you. That seems to be the mantra of the globalists and their global governance. What do you think, John? What do you think is the end game here in terms of Canada Post?
Well, I don't disagree at all with anything that's being said. Personally, I have an exit strategy. I'm not planning on sticking around. I'm looking at buying some property way out in the woods, and
Going fully analog.
that's exactly it. I think the writing is on the wall for what the folks in power want.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that are going to be successful, but they are making, leaps and bounds at the moment.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's where I'm at with that for sure.
Interesting. Well, Michael, we'll turn it back to you. We're coming up on the hour. Gentlemen, we tend to, our practice is to finish off the hour with a prayer. You're welcome to participate. We invite you to do so. I want to thank everyone. First of all, I want to thank our two guests, Ryan Ordzik and John Devine, for being with us and sharing all this really incredibly fascinating and troubling information about what's going on in what I described as a pillar of Canadian society, and that is Canada Post. I can remember as a kid collecting stamps and mailing letters, and I mean, I can't imagine Canada without Canada Post. We wouldn't have a country without this institution, and to see what it's come to is very, very troubling, and it's pitiful, and it's so preventable too. But it's a great example of what happens or what inevitably happens when human beings are not treated with dignity and with care and with trust. Any company, any organization is only as good or as bad as the people who are out there providing the service and doing the work. And I think it's just shameful and deplorable and disgusting the way Canada Post workers have been treated, not only by the company, but by our federal government. So I want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming on and sharing this time with us. I hope that this has been meaningful content for our viewers and listeners. And it really fits in well with a lot of the themes that we talk about on our show on Gray Matter, trying to build awareness. And also, and this is the silver lining I want to leave off with, it's a great example of what can happen with citizen-led advocacy. These two gentlemen they just were dogged. They knew they were right. They believed in it, and they wouldn't stop. And look what they did. Look what they were able to accomplish. Huge feat. And I'm going to be praying that they get the result that they want, and that these poisons will no longer be made available to people at all. But with that, Michael, I'm going to throw it over to you, and maybe you can lead us in a closing prayer.
Yes. Yeah, I will. Leighton, as you were talking, I was thinking about the word honor and that quality of character of honor. And so our society, we've seen them dishonor the unborn, dishonor babies, dishonor the infirm, and now with MAID, dishonor the elderly. So it's only a matter of time before they dishonor and eat their own.
Yeah.
And dishonor
workers.
Workers.
Yeah.
This is like the snake eating its tail. The very people that keep the government going are now the ones experiencing the dishonor.
Yeah.
And I know there was a lot of dishonor, Leighton, in that whole court battle.
Yes.
That had been alluded to briefly in this conversation. So I'll pray now and close this off. But Lord, thank you for the opportunity we have to honor one another and to be our brother's keeper, to be responsible for members of our community and our neighbors, and to know our neighbors' names, and to live and build people, including ourselves, that honor you, Lord, but also honor those around us. And we thank you for the opportunity to love. We thank you for the opportunity to listen and to speak truth and to honor those around us. And may we think on those things, Lord, those honoring principles of life that you give us in the Holy Scriptures. And we thank you for this time. We thank you for Leighton and for Ryan and for John and their families and the sacrifice that has been made through the years. And we praise you for your kindness and love and your light in our hearts. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks, Michael, for that. I want to thank our guests and all of you for being here. Just a reminder, this conversation is going to be posted to all of our platforms. Check us out on YouTube and subscribe. We really appreciate you doing that. Michael talked about that earlier.
Yes.
If you want to support the show and our content, there's Buy Me a Coffee. And just a reminder that our new commentary that just dropped today, and our interview, our weekly interview, is also available. It's on the Varsity Blues Scandal I think you'll find it really fascinating content. Check all that out. There's a lot going on with gray matter, and so please check all that out and share this content if you find it meaningful. Share it with your friends and with your social media groups. We really appreciate it. The more we can get this content out there, the more people we can reach. And the whole goal is to get people using their gray matter, pardon the pun, haha.
That's
so
right.
thanks everyone for being with us tonight. God bless all of you, and good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.